Yesteryear Village at the South Florida Fairgrounds allows people to take a step back in time to life in Florida before the 1940s. The village features a collection of real buildings and artifacts from a simpler time and educates the audience about the culture of early Floridian lifestyle.
Well, Yesteryear Village kind of started by accident because it was because of the schoolhouse. Loxahatchee Grove Schoolhouse was just a few miles west of here out on Southern Boulevard, and when the school was going to be torn down, the people of Loxahatchee Grove said, hey, we want to save our school because that's the school our parents went to, or different family members. So the Fairgrounds said, well, if you will get somebody to move it, you can put it out on this bare lot. And back then there was nothing out here but bare lot. And they did get people to move the school out, and they got people to restore it, and they opened it for the fair that year. And when the fair opened and they had the schoolhouse here and people found Loxahatchee Grove Schoolhouse here, they got very excited about it and said, hey, that's great, they saved our school. Then the fair started getting phone calls from other people saying, this old building's about to be tore down, do you want it? This old building's about to be tore down, do you want it? And that's how we ended up with all these other buildings.
Because it takes you from the beginning to the present. It's the only museum I know of in South Florida for telephone service and what took place from the time Alexander Graham Bell made the first phone call, when he spilled acid on his hand and asked Watson to come in, first phone call, of course he was in the next room, to the modern day cell phones. When we have the school kids, I get the biggest kick out of them because I take them in the back and I explain to them how we did toll calls, how toll calls were charged. And I explain the Pythagorean theorem. And I say you're going to use that stuff when you get older. That's really the main reason it's here. And it's a whole lot of people put a lot of effort into it.
And so the village began to grow, and the people that work in the buildings are all volunteers, and everything in the buildings have been donated to us. And when we get something donated, we try to figure out what building it would do the best in for the time of the building.
This particular building, we call it a museum, a Southern Bell Museum or Bell South Museum, and it's a collection of telephony equipment that comes all the way back from a replica of the original telephone to the modern day cellular services. And it and the Riddle House are the two most popular venues here in Yesteryear Village. The Riddle House because of ghosts and because of our telephones here.
The house has been featured twice on Ghost Adventurers. They do say that the individual that hung himself in the attic still inhabits the house. We also have heard of a lady in the kitchen and a young boy up in the kids' room. So with that information, they do have ghost tours that we have once a month. During the fair this year, we have our Bayou tours going with the theme of the New Orleans theme of the fair. And they do have, people have seen different things. I always say everybody vibrates at a different level, so, what you feel and believe is what you're gonna see and believe.
The house was a bit deteriorated. They cut it apart and put it on flatbed trailers.
And then they drove it here. I'm sure you've seen buildings moved down, the highway or down the river or, the waterways here in Palm Beach County. And they have to take down lights and different things in order to get the vehicles through.
It took maybe 2 years or so to put it back together. Part of the delay in getting the house put back together was the financial part, the fundraising that needed to be done. One of the other things is that the stairway in this house, both the steps and the railing, are the original. And I was told that it had 10 or more layers of lead paint, which it took quite a bit to get that off.
And then they got it here, and over time put it all back together again, and we get to be in the structure we're in today. I volunteer here to share the history of the buildings. People don't realize how much history we do have here in Palm Beach County. And and, you know, everybody thinks we're all just glitz and glamour, but, you know, we are history too, so.
Well, people my age come in here and they remember these things. They remember their grandmother having, they'll look at this and say, oh, my grandmother had one. The sewing machine is particularly important. People walk in all the time and say, oh, look at the sewing machine. My mother had a sewing machine. Because back then, mothers made a lot of the clothes. They made the curtains, they made bedspreads, they made things to make their house look nice.
Yesteryear Village is a piece of history that has impacted the lives of many different people since 1990. Older and younger generations alike find the history of Yesteryear Village to be beneficial to the education of its guests. Younger generations realize the luxuries of modern life that are taken for granted, and older generations are able to revisit memories of their youth. As a whole, the village is a reflection of the past that helps guide the future.